Welcome to our podcast, Inspiring Living, with me, Mark Candelaria. I am an architect, blogger, traveler, chef, father, and husband. I am the founder and now partner of a fabulous 20-person architecture firm specializing in high-end residential architecture, designing amazing homes across the country. We have hosted tours over the last 20 years to Italy, Spain, and soon Napa. And in the course of all this, I have met a lot of interesting people who truly inspire me. We are excited to now be in our second season, and our podcast is about all the opportunities that are right there in front of us to inspire living. Yes, we will talk about architecture and design, but every week we will venture to all sorts of topics that will inspire you, teach you, and motivate you to inspire living every day. My guests will include a wide gamut of amazing people, from those in the design industry to clients to real estate professionals, chefs, artists, sports figures, and philanthropists, and people who just flat out get it. So sit back and enjoy, and let's have some fun exploring all the opportunities that are there just waiting for us. Please subscribe and get ready to be inspired every week. Okay, as my dad says, here we go. Because Inspiring Living is all about the people and the organizations that inspire us, we are excited to have Monogram Appliances as one of our sponsors. Anytime we do a new kitchen or a kitchen remodel, Monogram Appliances are what we recommend to our client. Their appliances are the definition of luxury, meticulously detailed using the finest materials and an ownership experience that is second to none. This is how Monogram is always thinking ahead and inspiring and elevating the kitchen experience. Because at Monogram, they don't just elevate one thing, they elevate everything. Welcome everyone, and thanks again for listening to our podcast, Inspiring Living. Welcome to Season 2, and today our podcast features a very engaging podcast with a good friend and an amazing person, former mayor of Paradise Valley, Vernon Parker. His story and perspective is quite enlightening, so I invite and encourage you to give this podcast a listen, especially with all the political and social upheaval this country is currently experiencing. He'll give you an interesting perspective on all this. So welcome to December, and the holidays are in full swing. We are looking forward to our Candelaria Design virtual holiday party this year, as we have gone back into full working from home mode. I hope everyone's staying safe out there. I know we've got some tough times ahead, so just lay low and we'll get through this thing. Okay, a couple of announcements. Check out the debut of your Iconic Life magazine's Iconic House 2, designed by, of course, Candelaria Design, built by T-Mac Development, and featuring the interior design of over 20 top designers from not only Arizona, but from across the country. You can tour this year's Iconic House right now online. You can find the link in our story notes and on our Candelaria Design website. We will also be auctioning off a private and exclusive Spanish-themed paella dinner with wine pairings set for Sunday, December 13th at the Iconic House that I will prepare and serve, with all the proceeds benefiting Phoenix Children's Hospital. So stay tuned for that. I can guarantee you this will be a very special evening. So look on the story notes, check out Iconic Life. There'll be some links, and get a group together and help out Phoenix Children's Hospital at the same time. Our virtual cooking class on Instagram Live is set for Sunday, December 6th at 1 p.m. featuring Chef Jessica Williams, as she will be teaching us how to make Instapot cheesecake. Yes, you heard that right. We're going to make cheesecake in the Instapot. We will be celebrating my daughter Tiffany's birthday, and this recipe sounds very intriguing. The recipe is already on our website with the link in the podcast story notes, so gather your ingredients, get your Instapot ready, and go and follow along Sunday, and you will be enjoying cheesecake Sunday afternoon in Candelaria style. Okay, make sure you check out our spectacular 14-page spread in the new holiday edition of Phoenix Home and Garden magazine, just hitting the newsstands, featuring one of my favorite Candelaria Design homes that my partner Vivian Ayala and I designed in the middle of an 80-acre lettuce field in Yuma, Arizona, over 10 years ago. This is a 14,000 square foot house where we designed everything down to the mouse houses in the baseboards. And trust me, these are not just any mouse houses. These babies are tricked out by miniature artists June Klinksdale and Chris Toledo. They are over the top, so check them out. And from ultra traditional in Yuma to our super modern contemporary in Paradise Valley, you need to check out our cover feature in the November-December Lux magazine, featuring a stunning Candelaria Design home built by Schultz Development, which was masterfully designed and decorated interiors by designer Anita Lang. Check out her podcast in our Season 1, Episode 40. This home won Best of Show this year by the Arizona chapter of the American Society of Interior Designers. Okay, I want to give a big thank you to all of you who have been listening to our podcast as our listeners keep growing nicely. Thank you also for the ratings and reviews. They mean a big deal to us, so keep doing those, okay? We've gotten some great ones lately, and we really, really appreciate it. Remember, the first review we get dated December 4th or later will receive a free Candelaria collection pasta maker. I'm making pasta tonight, so I can't wait to get mine out. And so give us some love on those ratings and reviews, and make sure you direct message or email me that you posted the review so we can get you your pasta maker, okay? We do our best to inspire living in everything we do, from our podcast to our cooking classes to our tours, and of course, with our Candelaria Design homes. Okay, have a great weekend, everybody, and let's all live our lives with love, compassion, grace, and positivity. Okay, here we go. Today, I have an amazing guest who I've had the privilege to get to know over the years, and I truly call this man not only an inspiration, but a good friend. Today's guest served as mayor of the town of Paradise Valley, where he received a record number of votes, nearly 70%. He then served as the first ever Assistant Secretary for Civil Rights at the United States Department of Agriculture and was unanimously confirmed by the U.S. Senate. While at the USDA, he assisted the department in carrying out the settlement of the largest civil right claim ever won against the United States. My guest also served as the General Counsel of the United States Office of Personnel Management in Washington, D.C., and he served in the United States as Special Assistant to President George H.W. Bush. He was named by NBC as one of the top 100 African Americans in the country, and he has served and continues to serve on a number of boards and organizations. That's quite a mouthful.
Well, yes, it is.
So today I welcome Mr. Vernon Parker, and I've got his beautiful wife, Lisa, here too. So she agreed to join, and I didn't get her bio, so we'll let her pipe in along the way. But when they came over this evening, we had a little glass of wine, or two small glasses of wine, and some goodies, and it was amazing how far we got just in 30 minutes.
Oh, yeah,
and
absolutely,
we got to the point where he said, okay, we've got to record all this because we're missing everything.
Right.
So I'm glad we have both of you. So when she talks, you're just going to have to give her the mic.
I'll just give her the microphone. This is my inspiration. So
Yeah, there you go.
Give her the microphone.
So Isabel and I were fortunate to connect with you both over the summer while we were in Oregon in McMinnville, and that was a fun evening. I really enjoyed that.
That was fabulous. We had an incredible time.
So you've figured out that we were there through social media, I have a feeling, right?
Yes, we did.
Yeah. I'm always posting, and I love doing that because things like this happen, and that's why I love doing it. So I'm really glad you guys reached out, and you guys were like on a massive road trip, right?
Yes, I actually.
And welcome, by the way, Lisa. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you. I actually saw your post on social media, and I said, Vernon, you know what? He's up there in the
Wine
Willamette
country.
Valley, and I really want to drive up the coast and go up there. So we just got in the car, and we drove all the way up Highway 1 up to Cannon Beach and stopped in to see you, and it was fabulous.
We had a great time. Great little restaurant. I think if I remember right, it was a Spanish restaurant, wasn't it?
Yes, it was.
Yeah, it was really, really good. So then from there, where did you guys go?
Cannon Beach. We went to Cannon Beach.
Cannon
after
Beach.
that,
Okay.
yeah.
But then I thought you were going somewhere different after that.
Well, we were supposed to go up to the Seattle area, but we ended up not doing that. We ended up heading back down to Phoenix.
So nice summer road trip.
It was an incredible time.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Very cool. So tell us about yourself, Vernon. Where are you from? And tell us about your journey as a young Vernon Parker.
Jeez, that's, well, first of all, thank you so much.
You're welcome. This is
fascinating.
awesome.
We just really enjoy the opportunity to sit down with you.
Well, we always have fun when we get together.
Yeah, no, but
have you noticed that?
Yeah, but to sit down with a famed architect such as yourself.
I'm a
this is
famed podcaster. And someday I'll be a famous architect. All right.
There we go.
So this is your story. Let's hear.
Okay,
Where did you start out? Where were you born? I think it was Houston.
Yeah, I was born in
Texas.
Houston, Texas. I was born to a very young mother. Well, she was 20 years old, actually.
Yeah.
And I had one older brother, and my older brother, he was about a year and a half older. And when I came into the world, my mother, she was taking care of my brother. My father, she was married, but my father really didn't have the responsibility or the love of the responsibility to take care of his family. So my mother's sister was out visiting her in Houston, Texas, and so my mother, and this is pre-cell phones, obviously.
Yeah.
So my mother told my aunt, she said, "Hey, listen, our mother said to send the baby out with you." So my mother gave me to my aunt, and my aunt came back to Long Beach, California. She shows up with this probably 6-month-old baby.
Wow.
And my grandmother, who had 4 kids in the house at the time, she looked and she tells a story. She just started weeping and crying,
Oh, wow.
and she was like, "I don't know what to do." And so she couldn't read, she couldn't write,
Hmm.
and soon enough, my mother really she came back from Houston to Long Beach, and she wanted me back. And my grandmother was all that I knew.
Yeah.
And so my grandmother said, "Nope, you gave him to me, so he's mine."
Hmm.
And so we grew up. I grew up with my grandmother and several aunts and uncles. But my mother, she never relinquished responsibility. She always moved right around the corner, and I used to stay with her and my mother.
Wow.
But it was really interesting because the one thing that my grandmother instilled in me, she instilled a sense of I never really wanted to let her down
Mhm.
because she was the daughter of someone, a sharecropper who was a slave. And so when I was very small, every year what we would do is we would get in the car, my uncle would drive, we would fry chicken and bake a cake, and start driving. My uncle was a preacher, so he would do these tent revivals. And so
Oh,
we would
wow.
get in the car and we drive out to Louisiana. And I'll never forget going to her father's house. And it was fascinating because it was in the deep woods, no electricity.
So what year was this roughly?
This was probably about 1967.
Okay.
No electricity, outhouse, and everything. And I remember when someone landed on the moon, and his name was Papa Ellick. And so he goes, "Now, Louisa, no one went on that's just a big lie. No one landed on the moon." And my grandmother was so special, and I never really wanted to let her down. And I always wanted to, excel and to do something that she
Make
could
her
not
proud.
do. Exactly.
Yep. I totally get that. So from Long Beach, I mean, you were what, a baby when you moved there,
Yes.
and you grew up your whole life pretty much as a young Vernon Parker was in Long Beach, right?
Yeah, and that was a tough time because, gosh, my mother, we grew up on welfare.
Yeah.
And I grew up in a household where my uncle, my grandmother, her youngest son was hooked on heroin.
Wow.
And I would come home from school and I would see needles under the bed, and I'd come home, and in the bathroom, he and his friends were up shooting with the spoon and just everything. And I had a job at a very early age. I would buy things, come home, the entire home would be gone, stolen. And so I just couldn't take it anymore. And I loved my grandmother, but I moved out when I was 17. And so I started my own life at 17 years old and lived on my own.
So what I always wonder about things like that, my experience was much easier than yours, but there was temptation. There's opportunities to go down a bad path all around. They were always there as a teenager when I grew up. What in you kept you from going down that path, do you think? I mean, was it an inner voice, an inner spirit, or you wanted to make your grandmother proud, as you mentioned? I mean, what kept you from just saying, "Oh, shoot, I'm just going to have fun. These guys look like they're having a good time. I'm just going to hang out with them."
Well, I'll never forget, I was a very young child, and I was with a guy, and I remember his name was Tyrone Fox. And so we were out in front of this hamburger stand. We didn't have any money, and we wanted to get a pastrami sandwich. And this little old lady walked by, and he ran by and snatched her purse. And I had a choice to make. Do I run with him? And I turned around, ran home the other way. And mainly because I've seen the tragedy, and I didn't want to let my grandmother down. I mean, her nephew was on death row
Hmm.
up in San Quentin, and I would see my grandfather, who found my grandmother because she escaped him.
Hmm.
She left
Hmm.
Houston, Texas, and said, "I'm going to leave," without him knowing.
Yep.
And he found her, and just seeing the anguish and pain. And I'll never forget, I was in the 8th grade and on the graduation program, and I still have it too. There was this phrase, it was, "The love of learning is a key to knowledge." And I always wanted to really make my grandmother proud, and to not let her down, and not let the other people in the neighborhood down also,
Yeah.
because where I grew up, it was just violence.
Yeah.
It was prostitution everywhere you walked, because Long Beach at the time was a naval port.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll never forget when those ships came in.
It was insanity.
It was insanity. We lived one block, and the street was called Anaheim Avenue.
Hmm.
And it was just flooded with prostitutes. It was like you couldn't even turn around.
Yeah.
And so it was by the grace of God, because my grandmother, she took me to church every day with her. We'd go to church from 9 in the morning till 3. She'd have meetings in her home, and she couldn't read, and she would have me read the Bible to her every night. And I would read it to her, and we would discuss it, and we would listen to this radio show, pre-podcast, but there was a radio preacher by the name of J. Vernon McGee. And we would listen to him explain the Bible. He had a program called Through the Bible. So I would read the Bible to her, and I would listen to that program, and I would try to get in. And so all of those things
soaked in.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting. So, yeah, it sounds like, you had just enough of that stuff, and you've already mentioned it like 5 times, the pride of, making your grandmother proud of you. And I just think there's something in you, my friend, that is such a good thing. And you are always gravitating towards the good, is what I hear. Just listening.
Well, I've always tried to.
Yeah.
And, and there are times in everyone's life where you don't gravitate toward that, but you always come back, because it's the seed that's been planted.
Yep.
And the tree could be cut down, and then it's the seeds.
Yeah, it's the essence.
It's the essence.
It's the essence of who you are.
Right. You always come back to that.
Yep. No, I love
Yeah.
that. So from Long Beach, you ended up getting into college. You went to high school there, I'm assuming, and did you play sports, or did you do anything like that?
Yeah, I played football. I played sports. Sports was another avenue that kept me out of trouble too.
Interesting.
Because my mother, she would always keep me in the sports program.
So you were busy between your grandmother and sports, and
I was very busy.
You kept busy.
And I've had a job ever since I was 13.
Yeah. What did you do?
Well, I worked in a grocery store for 8 years.
All right, that's good.
8 years, and the one thing that I remember is that in high school, have you ever heard of the movie Freedom Writers? WRITERS. Well, it's a very famous movie, and Hilary Swank, she played in the movie. And so it's about an inner city high school, but it really wasn't an inner city high school, but the inner city kids were actually bused there. And it became an epic movie called Freedom Writers, and that's the high school that I went to.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, but I remember one counselor, because I did really well. And one little story, there was this one kid, because we were bused into school.
Yep.
And so we go there, and so it was an all-white school, and most of the people there were sons and daughters of doctors and lawyers. And so I will never forget going home with one of them one day. And we go to his house, and we sit at the table, and the snacks came out, and the homework came out, and people were helping with the homework. I said, "What the fuck? What is this?
What kind of life
What
is this?"
And then I said, and then I said, "Wow.
I've seen this on TV, but it really is
it's
real."
Like, Leave It to Beaver is not a reality. I mean, this is not a reality show. And then my grandmother, she cleaned houses for a living. And so there was this one house that she would always come to, and she would, I would go with her.
And see some of these places.
Oh, my goodness, swimming pools and everything. And I kept saying, these are some of the things that I want for myself and for my grandmother.
Yep.
And one thing that Vernon hasn't mentioned, and I don't know if he wants me to mention this
Go
or
for it,
not,
Lisa. That's
but-
why we got you here. She keeps him straight. I've noticed that.
Yeah. But actually, Vernon was born cross-eyed.
Okay, I didn't know
And
that.
he was born with a stutter, and he still has a bit of a stutter, but he had to overcome that. So these were additional handicaps
Yep.
to overcome.
Yep.
And I'm going to tell the story for you, but your grandmother cleaned houses, and you were taken to the county hospital to have your cross-eyed fixed, and they weren't fixed properly. And one day he went with his grandmother to one of the houses that she cleaned for this doctor who was a very specialized, what was he, honey? Well, he was an eye surgeon.
doctor.
Thank you, an eye surgeon.
Yep.
And the wife took one look at him and said, my husband has to treat him.
Huh.
I'm getting teary-eyed thinking about
That's
this
so
because
cool.
that's so cool.
Yeah.
And so he did the surgery for free and fixed Vernon's eyes.
Yep. There's good people out there. There's bad people and there's good people, right?
No, absolutely.
Right?
Yeah. So that's, and it was.
How old were you when that happened?
I was probably about 11 or 12.
Wow.
11 or 12, because, the county hospitals were not the best. They left a
Sure.
piece of metal in my eye. And so Dr. Goldstein, he did it in a very nice hospital. It was Los Alamitos Hospital. I still remember it. And straightened my eyes out. My mother, well, first he tried therapy, and so my mother, she drove me to therapy 3 times a
Wow.
week, and that didn't work. But yeah, so I worked in the grocery store for 8 years, and all throughout high school and college, and I know how to bag groceries really well. I can separate them really well, and
That's amazing. So from high school, you graduated high school, and you stayed in Long Beach,
yeah.
and you went to the California State.
No, actually, when I graduated from high school, I ended up working in the grocery store. I think when I graduated from high school, I was 17.
Okay.
And worked in a grocery store, and so you had to take a class to become a grocery store checker. So it was at a community college, and so when I was in high school, I had an incredible GPA. It was over 3.6, 3.7, and no one told me about going to college. So I just graduated. The counselors never said anything. I went to a community college, and to take. So I had to take a class to become a certified grocery checker. And so I said, okay, well, while I'm here.
Only in California.
Oh, yeah, exactly.
That's right. So I did that, and then I started taking other classes, and I said, this is pretty cool. And I got an AS degree, not an ASS degree, but an A. I get that every day because I am an ass. So, but
you have the degree to prove
yeah,
it.
exactly. So I get the AS degree, and then I transfer over to Cal State Long Beach.
Okay.
And I decided to major in mathematics. First, I decided to major in mathematics, and then I decided to major in engineering, and I ended up with minor in Spanish and finance. I ended up changing, And
so you're a numbers guy.
well, I used to be. Now I'm more of a ideological, theoretical dreamer.
Yeah. So who does the books at your house? I get the feeling
I used to, and then she took it away from me.
I think
Then
Lisa does it.
Yeah, after it went to shambles, she took it away.
So one thing that you brought up during the course of that little conversation there, I've gotten involved with a group called Elevate with Tom Lehman and that whole group. What I think and what really affected me as a young kid was something you just mentioned, was having a vision of what is possible. Without that vision, you don't think it's possible at all. I mean, you don't even know it exists. You know, and my mom used to drag me to model homes, and I'd see these amazing houses, just like you were saying. I go, God, that's so cool. You know, I want to draw that and create that. But had she never done that, I would have never even knew those places like that existed. I mean, yeah, you see it on TV, but TV never seems real. You know,
True.
Is that true?
No, absolutely.
So I think a lot of these kids just need a chance to just see the possibility.
Oh,
and
without
a lot of
doubt.
them never get that opportunity.
Yeah, without a doubt, and that's one of the things. One of both Lisa and I, we have a huge passion for any organization that deals with children, but
Yeah.
a good organization. We were both involved with the Salvation Army.
Mm-hmm. So read about that.
Yeah, and I was actually really blessed enough to be on the National Advisory Board. And I walked into my first meeting, and I'm sitting there. There's Jerry Jones, who owns the Cowboys, Edsel Ford, who was the chair.
Yeah.
The Rooneys were there, and I said, "What the hell am I doing here?" And then and I remember why I was put on the board, because I benefited from the Salvation Army. And Lisa started a program. You want to tell a little bit about the program you started there to help these inner city kids?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Give us a little word.
Well, I started a program for boys who were like sixth, seventh, eighth grade boys, middle schoolers, down in Central Phoenix at the campus down there, because I looked at my own son at that age, and he was really struggling, and I realized that everything for him was his friends and social, and if
Yeah.
I hadn't been there and been able to, keep him in line, I thought, what are these other poor mothers doing with kids that don't, where they have to be at work and they can't be right there. So
Right.
we started a program for them after school. A lot of these kids they were from Kenilworth Elementary, and they were kids that had changed schools I don't know how many times.
Hmm.
And they didn't see their own value. They didn't see anything. And we brought in Brophy boys to help with math because we couldn't do the math.
Yeah. Yeah. No.
I had a bunch of moms that came down, and we did the English with them, and we had snack after school. It's kind of like what Vernon's talking about, where they came to the place, we had snack, we helped them with their homework,
Sure.
and then it got a little more sophisticated, and we got ASU tutors and got
Wow.
ASU involved, but those kids really benefited from that.
So this
and it
was a
really-
complete nonprofit organization that did
Yes,
all this,
yes,
right? It wasn't a
yes.
government.
Oh, no. It was just something I started through the Salvation Army Women's
Yeah.
Auxiliary. And I was president of it, so I just said, this is what I want to do.
Right. And I just find, with my involvement with Habitat for Humanity and Elevate and some of these organizations, if we waited for the government to start
Yeah.
some of these things, it would never happen. I mean, it would be
Absolutely.
such a shambles to begin with. And so all of these things like Salvation Army, all these groups, I just think most of them are just absolutely amazing what they actually get done, because people, there's no bureaucracy to make it
There's
happen.
no red tape. in
No
there.
red tape. You just get it finished. So thank you for doing that. I just think that's stuff like that. I love stuff like that. So from Long Beach, then you got a position with Rockwell International after you got your BS degree in finance, right?
Yeah, that was very interesting because I graduated from Cal State Long Beach. I had a finance
Yep.
degree, and so I went through all the interviews. I was trying to find a job, and so
How old were you then, roughly?
22
Yeah,
or
okay.
so, 22 or so, and so I'm still working in the grocery store, and so I'm sitting there working in the grocery store. So this woman who used to always come through my line, she goes, "I thought you graduated," and I said, "Yeah, I did." She goes, "I'm looking for," and I said, "I've been looking for a job for like almost 9 months," and she goes, "How were your grades?" I said, "Well, it was well above 3.0, and she said, "Well, here, call my husband." And he was a senior executive at Rockwell.
Yep.
And I called him, and I was hired the same day.
See?
Yeah. And
You
just
never know what
working-
happens in the grocery
you
line.
never know. And unfortunately, I was
I'm saying
not
it for my daughters, just to
Well-
get a job, even if it's at the grocery store. You never know where it can lead, right?
Well, I should have been working the express line. It wouldn't have taken me as long to find a job, So I don't know.
That's so funny.
Oh my
So
goodness.
Rockwell, you're there for how long? And
Just-
where-
I was there for 2 years.
Okay.
And so there was this guy who lived in the neighborhood. His name was Foxy John. Okay, so he kept telling me, "Hey man, you need to go to law school," because I would go to the university that he used to call it the university, which was a Winchell's donut shop. So I'd go there and sit there and talk to all these fascinating people. This guy went to Harvard. And he would, if you saw him, you would think he was homeless. And he was so eccentric. He kept saying, "You got to go to law school. You got to go to law school." So I said, "I don't know how to do that." And so he says, "Let's sit down. Let's write your story, and let's send it off to different law schools." the first year I applied, I got into no law schools at all. And then second year I applied, I got into several. I went up to Hastings, and then I was ready to go there, and then I got this envelope from Georgetown, and it said, "You've been accepted in Georgetown University Law School." And I said, "My goodness, I can't afford that." So I went out there, and I said, "I have to go." I was 25. I said, "I have to go." And they said, "Well, you can come, but we can't give you any financial assistance." So my grandmother at the time, she was like 73, 74. She had stopped cleaning houses, and so she goes, "No, I want you to go." So she started cleaning houses again.
Wow.
My mother took a second job cleaning houses, and I owned my own house at the time. I sold it. I bought and I sold everything I had, and I bought a one-way plane ticket on this airline called
That's always
People's
the key.
Express.
Burn that bridge behind you.
You
So you
have
have no
to.
way back.
No way back.
You got to succeed.
And I said, if I do well, then they'll have to keep me. So
Yep.
I was on this airline called People's Express with a chest of, a chest of clothing, and I got out there, did well the first semester, and there were some days I didn't have any food, and that's how I met my lovely bride, Lisa.
Okay, I was wondering where she
Yeah,
merged onto this
yeah.
highway here.
So we were at Georgetown, and Georgetown, it's a phenomenal place, but to get in there, you're generally from Harvard, Yale, Ivy League schools. So she was from Arizona State, and I was from Cal State Long Beach, and so no one would let us in their study groups. So all the state school people, we formed our own study groups, and so I remember there were some days I was, didn't have enough food, and she would bring food for me, and when I first moved out to Washington, D.C., I bought what I believe was a really warm coat. It was like a windbreaker. And it was freezing. And she saw me, and she went out and bought incredible warm clothes for me. And so that's how we became.
Now, how did you end up out there, Lisa?
Oh, gosh.
Because you were going to ASU, sounds like.
Yeah, I went to ASU. I had gotten a master's degree in history, and my dad was a lawyer, and I didn't want to be a lawyer because he was a lawyer. And I was teaching at Xavier, and it was my third year teaching at Xavier, and I just looked at Mrs. Partridge, who'd been there like 50 years, and I thought, "Oh my God, is this me?" And she was living off of her kids, she was living off of her students who got into Georgia. And I said, I can't do this. I just can't. So I just applied to two law schools, ASU and Georgetown. I got into Georgetown.
Wow.
I had a daughter. At the time, I wasn't married. I mean, I had been married. I
Yep.
was divorced, and I had a daughter. And I just took a flying leap and went out there. And in fact, I knew so little about it, I went to the wrong campus for orientation. I went to Georgetown undergrad.
Oh, wow.
But the law school's actually up by the Supreme Court on New Jersey Avenue. And I was late, and I had to walk in with my daughter. And I was so embarrassed because all these students are looking at you, and I'm walking in with my little kid. Nobody else has a kid. And so that's how I got out there.
Oh, interesting. And that's where you two met then.
Yeah, we had Georgetown it had 500 students in the first year class, and they break you down into 100 students in a section, and Vernon was in my section. And then they break you further down into one class of 25 students. And everybody's terrified because, it was the time of the paper chase, if you recall that show on PBS.
Yeah.
And everybody's terrified of law school. And so we're in the section of 25, and he was sitting in front of me, and the professor asked a question, and nobody's raising their hand. And Vernon puts his hand up like this, like, "Oh, this is such a silly question." And I thought to myself, what an arrogant asshole that is.
Well, he had that asshole degree, remember?
My AS.
Yeah, the ASS.
And that's how we met.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So then
Anyway.
did you both graduate from law school at the same time?
Yeah.
Yeah, the
we
same
were in
year.
the same year, the same section, the same everything. And we actually, then I met him at a party, and he asked me to marry him that night.
Wow.
And I said, "You're insane."
It sounds like
And
my mom and dad's story almost.
yeah, well, no, because 6 years later, I actually married
Oh,
him.
okay. Wasn't 6 hours.
Yeah,
Wow.
and so we actually what happened, how we transitioned from law school. I met a guy named Lee Atwater, and
Oh,
Lee,
yeah.
for the political junkies out there, Lee Atwater was this brilliant. He was like James Carville times 1,000.
Hmm.
So he introduced me, but on the yeah, of course,
Yep.
but he introduced me to a guy named George H.W. Bush,
There
who
you
was
go.
who was the vice president.
Yep.
And at the time, I was a registered Democrat, and I did my research. I said, "This guy is really nice." So I did my
So
research.
you were a
on him.
registered Democrat at that time.
Yeah, I mean, I
You didn't know any
absolutely.
different.
And then, yes, you can say something in 1 second. So I met this guy, Lee Atwater. And so then Lee introduced me to George H.W. Bush. And so did the research on him and said, okay, I'm going to start volunteering for his campaign. And so I volunteered in my third year of law school. I went to New Hampshire, went door to door, went to South Carolina.
Wow.
Have some funny stories about that. We don't have enough time.
We'll
for
do
that.
another podcast on
Yeah,
that.
but it was just hilarious. And then at the time, Lisa was working with Bob Dole.
Oh, God, I knew you were going to bring
Well, no, it's the truth. And I said, you better get on the George Bush train. And so, but here you go, Lisa.
Okay, the real story about the Democrat versus Republican is this. So, Vernon is, this was the time of the Sandinistas,
Yep.
and he was very anti-Sandinista. Every position that I talked to him about, because I was very political myself, he sounded like a Republican. And I said to him at one point, "What the hell are you doing being a Democrat?" And he goes, "You know what? I don't know."
Interesting.
But this is what happens. You're born and raised by parents
yeah.
that are one party, and you just go when you're
Yep.
18 and you register as that party.
Yep.
But your views really aren't in sync with them. And I said to him, you're really not in sync with a single Democrat position. And he finally said, "You know what? You're right.
Yep. Interesting.
Isn't that true?"
That's 100% true.
Yeah.
And then when we met George H.W. Bush, just what a fascinating man. Just
Yeah.
just the salt of the earth. It just gave me so many opportunities when I ran for Congress in the Congressional District 9. I was probably one of the 2 or 3 people that he endorsed in the entire country.
Interesting.
And so, yeah, just just a phenomenal
I've got an
person.
interesting guy for you to meet. You may have met him before. I won't mention his name on the podcast, but remind me to introduce you to him because he worked for the next Bush in his
I worked
campaign.
for him. Yeah, I worked for him
So
too.
you two probably know each other.
Yeah.
But that would be interesting. So you did that. He got elected.
Yes.
He became president.
He became president. Yes.
And
absolutely.
then you got some appointments or some things from that, did you?
Yes, I was 2 years out of law school. I became general counsel of a federal agency, and I said to myself, "What took so long to make that appointment?" and then, but I was just so young and just.
So how old were you at that time?
I was about 29,
Okay.
30, but I was so young, and I thought that I should have been general counsel of a federal agency, and most general counsels have 30 years experience.
Yeah.
And at the time, I was
Sometimes
like,
it's good to be naive, right?
yeah.
And he's like, "Well, of course I am."
Right,
I
I'm
was
ready.
Like, yeah. Heck, I mean, my goodness, I've survived Long Beach, California.
That's right.
I can do this. And then after that, I went into the White House and became a special assistant to the president. And that was probably one of the most fascinating, one of the most enjoyable experiences I'll never forget.
Yeah, so in 10 short years, you went from Long Beach, basically, to that.
Yeah, in less than 10 years.
Yeah, so how...
It was like 7...
What do you think in your mind
years.
when you're in Long Beach, you're dealing with everything you just described earlier, and all of a sudden you're in the White House, or damn close to it?
No, the first day that I drove there, because I had a parking space because I was a commissioned officer.
Yeah.
And I had a parking space right on West Exec Drive, and it was right next to the West Wing. And I was just floored. It was just fascinating coming from Long Beach, Compton area, and just being in the White House in less than 5 years of leaving Long Beach.
That's so cool.
It was just fascinating.
That's
it was
so cool.
fascinating.
So you did that for the 4 years he was president.
Yeah,
Because
yeah.
he didn't get reelected.
No, he didn't get reelected.
Someone
and-
named Bill Clinton, I think, knocked him out of the.
No, someone named Ross Perot knocked him
Oh,
out.
yeah, well, yeah,
because
there you
Ross
go.
Perot won
I'm all
Ohio.
ears, I'm all
Yeah.
ears.
Had Ross Perot not been in there, we would have won that
Yeah,
election.
there you
I'm
go.
sure.
Yep, interesting.
So yeah, we did that, and then we decided because we stayed in Washington, and then our son was born, and then he was turning school age, and so we really didn't want to raise him back on the East Coast. So we had a choice between California and Arizona, and we decided on Arizona, and we packed up our truck and moved to Paradise Valley. Because what happened, and I'll make this a real quick story, but what happened, we had clients out here, and so Lisa was like, "Oh, the only way I move back is between Mummy Mountain and Camelback," and so she kept driving by this house, looking at it, and so she goes, "This is a great house. We have got to get it." It was right on Mummy Mountain. So we go. Before we go home, I put an offer in the house, and I didn't communicate that well because my communication skills are not that good, and so I kind of dropped my communication skills there. So we get back to Virginia, and the guy calls and said, "We've accepted your offer." And so we took a walk, and I said, "Hey, Lisa, you know that house you like?" She goes, "Yeah." I said, "They accepted our offer." She goes, "What offer? We haven't even sold this house."
You told me this story at dinner. That was a good story.
Anyway, so that's how we ended up coming back to
Arizona.
Yeah.
And what year was that roughly?
1993?
93, okay.
No.
97.
Okay.
97. Yeah, and I was like, here's the thing about us. I have these good ideas, but I'm kind of like scared to pull the trigger.
Yeah.
And
This
I
guy
always-
isn't.
And no, I need him to pull the
Yeah.
trigger. And
I've
it
already
happens-
figured that out.
Yeah, it happens all the time. And then the bizarre thing was that we hadn't even put our house on the market in Virginia, but we ended up selling on the same day. We closed on the same day out
See?
here
It was
as out
it was
there.
meant
But
to happen.
that was kind of like a God moment
Mhm.
because, anyway.
Just all fell into place.
Yeah, everything fell into place.
So all of a sudden now you live in Paradise Valley, Arizona.
Which is where I grew up.
Yeah.
So that's why.
It
we
was
kinda-
home.
Yeah.
It was home for you. There's
Yeah.
still quite a difference from Long Beach and Compton.
Yeah.
Right? A little bit.
Yeah, it's a huge difference. I think the African American population is less than 1%.
In PV?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think less than 0.1.
Yeah, less than
Yeah,
0.1.
0.1.
It was really funny. I got the quote of the year in the Arizona Republic because when I was elected, the reporter, Diana Bayless, she called and she goes, "Vernon, how does it feel to be the first African American mayor in Paradise Valley?" So I said, "Well, I really didn't rely on that part of the population to get me over the top." So that garnered me the quote of the year in the
Yeah, so
Arizona
you
Republic.
moved there in 97, and by 2008, right, you were mayor.
Yeah,
So that's another, just a quick 11 years. I mean, in 11 years, it's just a blink of an eye.
yeah.
So from someone that moved there, how many people did you know in Paradise Valley?
I knew the current mayor, Ron Clark, and council member Scott Lamar.
Oh, yeah, Scott
and
Lamar.
a
I
few,
know Scott.
Yeah, Scott's good. Scott's
Yep.
a very good friend. And so Scott and Ron sat me down and they said, "Hey, we want you to run for council and we'll help you out." And I did. I worked really hard because a good friend of mine told me my first political election, he goes, "There's two ways to run a campaign, unopposed and scared." And so we ran scared, and we got nearly 70% of the vote. And that's what I tell people all the time about Arizona, and I tell people that about people in general, is that if you have an idea, if you have a vision, and if you can articulate that vision and talk to people,
Mhm.
that deep down, is there racism in America? Absolutely.
Yep.
However, it's what you make of it,
Mhm.
because when people voted for me, they didn't. I got 70%, nearly
Yeah.
70% of the vote, and there's the white population is about
99%.
exactly.
Yeah.
But they looked at me as a person. They looked at me as my accomplishments, and I do believe that when people talk about the state of Arizona, that it's a backward state. I take extreme exception to that.
Yeah.
Same thing when I ran for Congress. I got the Republican nomination, and I almost won the congressional seat, and that's because people, do we have racists out there? Sure. Do we have people who will not vote for you because of the color of your skin? Yes, absolutely. But I think just the inherent feel of the state, I've experienced more racism in California than I have.
In Arizona.
Mhm.
Interesting. So on that subject, then, you know, do you think things are getting better or worse in that regard? I mean, I know this summer everything was horrible and it was blown, into the media just ate it all up.
Yeah.
And you lived through the 60s and 70s and 80s and 90s, and where are we in Europe in your perspective? That's what I'd like to know.
Boy, my perspective, I believe.
Are we making progress or are we not?
I believe things are being exposed. One of the things that I believe is that we have a long way to go.
Yep.
And the overt racism is not there. We don't have the historical racism that we've seen in the past. However, we do have a long way to go, and I think the biggest issue that faces us today would be prison reform.
Mm-hmm. Interesting.
Because we have a lot of young African American kids and kids of color who are put behind bars for nonviolent crimes,
Right.
and they learn that way of life. And so instead of putting them behind bars, I think we'd be better served to educate them and to better served to really
Train
give them
them.
a skill and train them.
Yep.
Because it costs more to incarcerate than it does to educate. And so,
And this is a Republican saying this.
yes, this is someone who's seen it from all sides.
Yep.
And so we've got to get rid of having the first instinct. And there was a Democrat by the name of Joe Biden who came up with the 3 strikes and you're out. And he has since regretted that.
Mm-hmm.
But to incarcerate someone for life for something that's a nonviolent crime, and to Donald Trump's credit, he began prison reform. He let a lot of these folks out of prison who did not commit nonviolent crimes, and we have to start looking at that. I know both Lisa and I. That's our passion. We've always talked about that. About if there was something we can do to introduce legislation or whatever. If we actually go back to what you said earlier, if there has to be an organization out there that would be willing to work with young people
Yep.
who've been incarcerated to
Yep.
try to train them.
Yeah. No, I totally agree with that. I think so many people are incarcerated for just totally idiotic reasons, and all they're doing is tipping the pendulum in the wrong direction because of that experience than the right direction. So
Well, and why are we incarcerating drug addicts?
yeah.
Who are in possession, and now we're turning them into criminals. I
Right.
mean, that's the whole problem. But I think I would like to address something that Vernon's probably reluctant to address, and that is the way the police approach people of color.
Yeah, we talked about that night we had dinner.
Yeah. And, both our son and Vernon have had experiences with the police that if they had been white, I
Right.
do not believe they would have had. And so that there is that issue that has got to be addressed because it's just wrong.
Yeah, and it sounds like an awareness is definitely being brought into that light with the George Floyd, and those are extreme cases of what are usually
Right.
minor things that
Right.
get misinterpreted.
And I don't mean to imply that all police officers
Right.
are a problem. The vast majority are wonderful people.
Right.
But I do think, the body cameras are a very good thing because that'll expose things. And it will expose things to protect officers
Sure.
who are afraid. I mean, when you're reaching into your car for something, and I mean, maybe you're reaching in for your driver's license,
Right.
but the officer
you don't
doesn't
know.
know that.
Yep.
So all those things are good, but
Right.
but I do think we have to address sort of I don't want to say systemic racism in the police departments, but there is definitely a double standard.
Yeah, it sure seems that way. And, you know, I've had my own experiences, and I'm not as dark as you are, Vernon. But
Yes, you are.
it depends on how long I stay out in the sun. But I get
Yeah,
pretty
you
dark.
can get up there,
But I've experienced. I know what you're talking about. I mean, it's different for everybody, but I've been there, and I know it's. I say, why are you judging me on that? It has nothing to do with what we're even talking about or what we're doing. You know.
Well, I'm on the board of the Arizona Department. Basically the Arizona Highway Patrol, the African American Community Outreach Board,
Good.
and so we've and when you look at what they have to go through, and their lives are being put on the line every day, and the training that they go through is impeccable. But like Lisa said, they are we do judge people by their actions, and so we just have to have a lot better training out there for police officers.
Yeah, totally agree.
And I just want to go back to why Vernon originally went to law school, which he didn't mention. He bought a house in Cerritos, California, when he was, how old were you? 23. He owned his own home at 23 years old, and it was an all-white area, and the police would stop him all the time coming home.
Coming out of his own house.
Coming out of
or
his
going
own
into
house.
his house.
Going into his house. Going
Yeah.
into his neighborhood. And one time they stopped him, and they started in with, oh, I smell marijuana. I smell, this and that. And so I'm telling this secondhand because he won't tell it, but he went down to the police station that night and complained about the officers, and that's the night he decided he would go to law school.
Interesting. So
And
that's
you
what kicked that
should
off.
have mentioned that little vignette.
Yeah, sometimes it's that little fire that gets
I just
lit.
took the fifth on that one, huh, Lisa? That's why.
So another aspect that I find very fascinating about the two of you is obviously you're a Caucasian, Lisa, and you're obviously an African American. What has that experience been like when the two of you are together? I mean, you have got to have some just awkward situations that have come your way, and some that are just really uncomfortable. I mean, what happens?
Well, I think the funniest story is that when we were driving from Washington D.C. to here, we stopped in West Virginia to get gas, and that's all you want to do is stop there to get gas. Nothing against the fine people of West Virginia, but this one guy, he had no teeth, and he was looked like he was a third generation meth addict.
Oh boy!
So we're putting gas in the car, and he looks at Lisa. He's shaking his head like this. And she looked at him and says to him, like, I would want to be with you.
Yeah, this is my choice.
A
or B.
A or B. No, it is funny because there's a lot of people who a lot of times things that are not said are just as powerful.
Right.
And so you can tell by people, like sometimes we may not be invited. This was like several years ago, but we may not have been invited to this or that, and I blamed it on me being over 6 feet tall, but for the most part.
Well, we've had some ugly experiences when we lived in Virginia, in particular. I would be called a whore. We would just be walking down the street in Falls Church, Virginia, and somebody would scream out whore to me and the N-word to him, and we had that a lot, and people would just look at men.
Yeah.
Men would look at me and just shake their head like what is wrong with you? And so we had a lot of that. That was in the 90s, and I think things have gotten better. And then our son went to a little preppy school, All Saints, and we did find that we were the family not invited to
Really?
a lot of activities that, not by everybody. We had our little circle of friends, but kind of, like the little, there's this party, and somehow we weren't invited. And
Interesting.
And then our son, in kindergarten, he there was a basketball program at the YMCA, and one of the dads had put flyers in every boy's cubby except for our son's, and I was really upset. And Vernon just said, "Forget it. We'll go over to the village and we'll just form our own basketball team."
There you go.
And so we did that.
Yep.
And then, sometimes you don't get invited to things, and I mean, maybe they just don't like you. I mean, I don't know.
Yeah.
You just don't know
You don't
ever.
know.
There's always that question mark in your mind. But for the most part,
Well, you guys have been married for 29 years.
almost, yeah, we'll be 30 years, but we've been together 36 years.
That's awesome.
And I just ignore it. He ignores it. We just do our thing, right?
But then we do come back to, the people of this great state elected me their mayor in Paradise Valley, and I got the Republican
I loved when you were
nomination.
mayor.
It was fun. Well, you know what? It was a very difficult time because it was
2008 through
2008,
10. Tough years.
and we had to cut. I ended up cutting, along with the council, 30% of our staff and 30% of our budget, and it was a very difficult time.
Yeah.
It was a very difficult time, and people were they were hurting, but we had to do what we had to do.
Yeah, I believe I met you when we started the El Charro project.
That's right.
Right? That's where you and I met.
Jackie
And
that's
and
right.
Christy and the whole team.
Jerry.
Oh my
yes.
God, what a project that was! I mean, that's one of my.
We got that done like that.
Yeah, that was.
And
And was
I got
good.
in
Look, I
trouble
mean,
for that, though.
Oh, you know how
Because
many people
I
that
told
put
him,
to
I said-
work?
I said, why do we have to go through all this red tape? I mean, it wasn't. I would have done it for anyone.
Yeah,
Because the sooner we got it open, the more people employed, the more taxes
Tax
coming
revenue,
into this.
yeah.
And so, but yeah, that was a fun project.
well, it was a great project for the architectural and building community. I mean, it put a lot of people to work at a really tough time.
Right, exactly.
So-
and Jim Bacon, who was the town manager, he did a great job. And
Yeah.
Jim was the
remember that
first
name.
professional
Yep.
town manager that the town of Paradise Valley ever had.
Yeah, so it's changed a lot down there over the years, hasn't it?
Yeah, it has, but I will always have a really soft spot in my heart for the town. It's just an incredible place. And
So let me give you my perspective here, okay?
yeah,
I work obviously at all the different jurisdictions with construction and architecture and getting permits and dealing with the bureaucracy. All I can say is the town of Paradise Valley is the best by far. I mean, it is such a difference working with the people down there than any jurisdiction I have ever worked with anywhere. And I'm not saying because you're sitting here, anyone that knows me knows I say that all the time.
yeah. No,
And I remember, I'm sure you remember a gentleman named Bill Mead.
oh my goodness, I love Bill.
Great
Yeah.
guy. We personally
Yeah.
threw his retirement party.
Yeah,
And that was so fun. And, just great names, Ben Thompson and
Yep.
Bill Mead. And they got a great crew down there now. George that we work
Oh,
with.
George
You
is
start everything with George.
Yes, that's right.
Okay?
George is a prince among men.
So anyway, I love the town of Paradise Valley.
I'm really glad to hear you say that, because as a realtor, I hear all the time, "Oh my God, it's the town of Paradise Valley. This is going to be so difficult." And I'm always like, "No, it's not. It's harder in the city of Phoenix or
way harder.
wherever."
Much more
So-
bureaucratic. What I love is I can pick up the phone and someone's going to answer the phone. I'm going to know who
Right.
they are. And
Exactly.
I'm going to get the real answer right away.
Right. And I can call George and I can say,
Yep.
"Hey, what's the scoop on this lot? I don't get it."
Yeah.
And he can explain
you
it if
immediately.
he has it.
Yeah. So no, that's a great thing. Now, so we got the Ritz-Carlton project brewing down there.
Yeah.
That's quite a project. There's some other great properties. I mean, there's the what's the one right across the street, the old one that's sitting there forever.
Oh, that's Smoke Tree.
Smoke Tree. Yeah, I worked on that for a while.
They have a very ambitious. They have a very ambitious desire that may not be able to get done. But who knows? Who
Yeah.
knows?
I mean, one of the things I see with Paradise Valley that is interesting is, this the one acre lot minimum, other than your colonial Miramontes and your Mountain Shadows and maybe now your Ritz-Carltons. But I think a lot of people want to live in Paradise Valley, but they don't always necessarily want an acre, right?
Yeah.
And that's
yeah,
challenging, isn't it? 'Cause
Yeah,
that's part of
a
the
very-
charter, basically, isn't it?
Yeah, well, it has some historical roots,
Right.
but for the most part, a lot of that was based on septic
Yeah.
because they didn't have a
Sewer
real
system.
sewer system there. But for the most part, you do have communities like Mountain Shadows, Colonia Miramonte,
Right.
and then you have other smaller segments out there too that
Yeah.
have less than 1 acre per.
Well, and that's again, that's putting pressure on the market there. That's why Mountain Shadows and Colonial Miramonte and all those price points are just going crazy
Yeah.
because as the population ages in Paradise Valley, people want to stay in Paradise
But they
Valley,
don't want an acre.
but they don't want an acre. And there's very few gated communities, lock and leaves,
Right.
where you can do that. I
Right.
mean, Finisterre is an acre, Clearwater Hills is an acre.
Right.
So there's just not many places to go.
So we should mention you're a realtor.
Yes.
So- so yeah,
I
you-
get this,
Yeah.
and so people are really, and then down where we live at 7600 Lincoln, which is just outside of Paradise Valley, our price points have gone crazy
Yeah.
because of that.
Well, just like where we are right now in our little place
Yeah.
here at the village. I mean, it's just, I'm so glad I bought my place in November last year
Yes.
because I'd hate to be buying it this year.
Yes. You're absolutely right.
So it's pretty interesting what's happening. What do you think the market's going to do this year in 2021? Let's assume we get a vaccine. Do you think the market's going to just, it's hot already.
It's going to keep going, I think. I think people are a little concerned about the stock market. And honestly, where do you park your money if you have a lot of money other than in real estate or the stock market? So I just saw today where we went over 30,000 on the Dow. I mean, that's just crazy numbers. So
Well, I
where
remember
do you
when we
go
went-
after that? You
I
go
don't know.
you go to real estate. You go to real estate.
Yeah.
And I listed a house. I was just telling you, I think,
Yeah.
when we were earlier, I listed a house on November 18th. I got an offer over list priced on November 18th, and the same house, I couldn't even sell it in 2018.
That's crazy.
And it's just,
Yeah, it's a
gone
hot
crazy.
market.
Yeah.
Market. So Vernon, what are you doing these days?
Well, as little as possible. No. These days, I actually do government relations and public relations, and help people with a lot of the projects that they're trying to get done throughout Maricopa County,
Mhm.
especially on the building side, and then on the government relations and public relations. I serve on a few boards. I serve on the board of Abrazo Hospitals here in Arizona, two of those hospitals, and I serve on the board of a company called Lincoln Heritage, which is insurance company here,
Yep.
and really mainly focus on government and public relations.
Yeah, good. Aren't you a little bit involved with my good friend Charles Keller too?
Yes. Well, yes. Charles and I actually, we met back in the George Bush days.
There you go.
And
Oh yeah,
it was on 15th Street. I'll never forget.
Yep.
It was.
He's told me some of those stories.
Yeah. No, Charles is great, and Charles, God bless him, he's doing his foundation. I was on the board of the foundation there, but Charles is a real prince of men too,
Yeah.
and he's doing all he can to help support underprivileged families and families going through medical crisis
Yeah.
too.
Extreme.
So,
Yep.
extreme, yeah.
So do you guys have a daily routine or favorite books or podcasts or any? What do you guys do for entertainment?
Well, our favorite podcast is Mark Candelaria's.
Inspiring Living. Yeah, there you go.
go. No, we actually
You both like to read. I know that.
Well, yes, Lisa's more of a reader. I do a lot of looking at investigation discovery at night.
Interesting.
Because, and we love the Great British Cooking Show,
Uh-huh.
baking show. We watch that a lot. We watch a lot of mystery shows and
Fun. That's awesome.
yeah, and we love traveling.
That's what I was gonna say. You guys both
Traveling
like
and
to travel.
food. We
Yeah.
love food.
But
We're
we
gonna
have that
you
in
guys
common.
over. Yeah,
Yeah.
we can have you guys over.
And a cigar too now.
And a
then.
cigar, but my new toy I love. I sous vide everything.
Oh, there you go.
Lisa.
I've got some good friends to introduce you to in that department.
And
then.
it is incredible. He missed his calling. He should have been a chef. Well, he missed a couple callings. He should have been a chef, and he should have been a college football coach.
There you go. There's still time. You got lots of time.
Those are two things.
So
you should
so
have
after
done.
this COVID-19 thing gets over with, what's your first trip?
Well, I've got to go see my mother in South Africa,
Okay.
and I haven't been able to go down there. She's 91,
Oh wow.
and that's an urgent trip, just given her age. And then after that, we want to go to Portugal, and I want to go to the Amalfi Coast in Italy because we haven't
Come
been
on
there.
our trip. come on one of our tours. That's one
yeah.
of our venues usually. Not this year, but probably 2 years from now we're doing that again.
Well, my trip that the first thing that I'm going to take after this is all over is probably either Buckeye. It's a little place in Arizona called Buckeye.
Yeah, it's not too far.
No, it's not far. No, but to visit Lisa's mother, I tell you, South Africa is a beautiful country.
So you guys have been there.
Yeah, probably about 5.
Yeah,
multiple times.
everyone says that.
I got to tell you, Mark, if you ask me one place on this world
Interesting.
where you want your last meal to be, it would not be France. It would not be Italy. It would be in South Africa.
Interesting.
Because the eclectic chefs there, they are so good.
Wow.
I've never had food like that.
Now, where
ever.
did your passion for food come from and cooking?
Well, I used to cook with my grandmother all the time, but she cooked a lot of soul food. I mean, we would have on Sundays we'd have these incredible
Okay, so
meals.
that's what I want. I want you to cook.
Okay,
some
I'm going to do
for
it.
me.
Some good. Oh,
That would
done.
be so good.
Done.
I
And
love
so
that.
what I've done is taken that little twist on the soul food and brought it into the acceptable culture.
But I also think that the move to Washington D.C. because you and I used to go out.
Oh yeah.
And I
Good
came
restaurants
I
there.
came from Arizona, obviously, and so we didn't have all the ethnic foods, and Vernon and I would just we'd go eat Ethiopian and Vietnamese and like all these foods that
I
I
love
just
that.
was like, wow, we've never had these, and he'd never had them. And Vernon's he's more I'm experimental, but he's like much more experimental than I am.
You and I need to hang out
Like,
a
he'll eat
lot more, man.
anything.
We're the two Andrew Zimmers. So what's your guys' favorite restaurant here in town? I don't want to put you too much on the spot because I know we're all good friends with a lot of
Gosh, I don't
guys,
know. I
but
don't think we want to say, do we?
go for it.
I'm going to say,
Go for it.
I love Vincent's.
Yep.
I love Rancho Pino.
Yep, we love Rancho Pino.
I love the new restaurant Vecina.
No, I don't know anything about it.
And I love Lon's.
Oh, yeah. I love the
eat it-
patio out there.
the sitting out on the
It's very
patio,
nice.
and his halibut is just incredible.
So what's this new one called?
Well, Vecina, it is just
Where's it at?
It's on 56 in Indian School. It's right next to that. It's in that little area.
Yeah.
The food is spectacular.
So where that little Italian kind of goofy thing was for a while?
It's like gourmet Mexican.
Oh my
think.
God, that
Yeah.
sounds awesome.
But I tell you, one of the best, probably the best food that I have ever eaten is when you go to Vincent's and you say just whatever chef wants to send out.
Yeah.
Because
Chef's choice.
because Vincent's the godfather of all the chefs here, and
Yeah.
and Carissa at Rancho Pino, fabulous chef.
She's amazing.
amazing. Yeah, she is just so good. We have such great food here. But I think my new favorite, like Lisa, I have to say Vecina is just.
I gotta
it's
try. I
just-
didn't even know that
It's
existed.
very small, but the food. I had this pork chop the other for my birthday there. It was unreal.
Huh.
I've
When was your
never-
birthday?
November 16th.
Wow!
Yeah.
Happy birthday, man!
Yeah, we're
That's awesome.
another year.
How old are you?
79.
You look great, man.
I do.
You don't look a day over 70.
I'm 61. I just turned 61.
Yeah, we're about the same age
yeah,
too.
Yeah. So
Interesting. Well, thank you so much for both of you stopping by. We got some more goodies in the kitchen, which we can finish up. But how do we connect with you, and where can we find you?
yeah. Oh yeah. Absolutely. My email is just very simple. Vernon Parker at cox.net, and I'm on Facebook. And Lisa, how do they find you?
She's on Facebook and Instagram.
I'm on Facebook and Instagram, and my email is lisa@lisafparker.com. That's an F as in Frank. I always have to say that so people don't put an S in there.
And we'll add all this to our story notes on our episode too, so you can
Yeah.
find these guys.
No, for speaking for both of us, we want to thank you because just for thinking of us to share our story with you.
It's a great story.
It's been great.
I love it. You guys are the best. I'm so happy we're spending a little more time. There's so little time in
Thank
this
you.
world, and
Thank
it's
you.
like once you meet some people that love to sous vide and love to travel and love to come over for a bite anytime. So thanks, you guys. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
I want to say a big thank you to my good friends at Stockett Tile and Granite Company, where your project is our priority. I want to thank the Stockett team along with so many others who contributed to the success of our fabulous demonstration kitchen in our new Candelaria design office expansion. You will have to check out our online video cooking classes, and our kitchen is amazing. I've had the pleasure of working with the Stockett team for nearly 40 years on many spectacular projects, and trust me, they are the epitome of excellence when it comes to tile, marble, and granite work, bar none. Their skill and customer service is impeccable, and the bottom line is they are just good people. I have traveled with, dined with, and just had good times, both personally and professionally, with Dave Stockett and his lovely wife, Becky, and they are the best. When it comes to your next tile and stone project, make sure Stockett Tile and Granite is a part of your team. Thanks for listening. We hope you enjoyed our podcast. We encourage you to write a review, screenshot it, and share it with your friends. Please instant message it to me and follow us on Instagram and Facebook. We thank you for listening, and we look forward to sharing more insights to inspiring living next week.